Steve Bartle, Ute Insider, kind enough to join us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. What is and we'll get to spring football. I know that's the number one priority of what we're going to talk about here, but is it going to be a complete overhaul to Alex Jensen's roster next year? Because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of returning minutes left on that team.
Sorry, Scotty, you were kind of breaking up, but I assume that was a question about Alex Jensen's
Yeah.
roster, and I heard overhaul. So
Yeah.
I'll kind of piece it together.
Yeah, take it from there.
I think I can pick up. Anyways, yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty significant overhaul from what we saw the roster we saw this season. And part of that is obviously with guys like Terrence Brown and Keanu Dawes, those guys really proved to be productive players in a very competitive conference, and so for Terrence and Keanu, the opportunity to for Keanu, the opportunity to potentially return home to Texas, where his mom resides in Houston, is an appealing choice, and then with Terrence. I think this is a big opportunity for him to move on and look for a situation where he can go to one of these blue bloods. But for Utah, this is a real opportunity for them to reset what they're to reset and really build. This is going to be kind of the real first opportunity for Alex and Wes to start to recruit and build this roster with actual intent towards their vision and what they want this basketball program to look like. So, for Terrence and for Keanu, obviously there's appeal beyond, Utah and money, but for the majority of the rest of the roster, it's really an opportunity for Utah to look for upgrades, to look for better fits in terms of what they're trying to build. And I think Alex and Wes are going to be much more prepared. It's interesting with college football and college basketball in the transfer portal, because even though the transfer portal opened up officially Monday night.
Yeah, I got you. I know where you're going with this.
Done
Yeah.
for the portal is done well before the portal officially opens. And going back to last year when Alex took over, he had 2 to 3 weeks to prepare for the portal and the work that is done there, when most of college basketball gets 3 to 4 months to prepare. And that includes, evaluations, that includes building relationships with agents and all of that sort of stuff. So Utah now getting a full year with Alex and Wes in place, they're going to be so much better prepared, in terms of evaluations and relationships, but also better equipped with resources to field the type of team that can be more competitive in the Big 12 as well.
Steve Bartle, Ute Insider, joining us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. All right, so Steve, when you look at this team as they continue to grow and develop during spring ball, a lot of love for the wide receiver group. Could this be the deepest that room's been in quite some time?
And I tell you, it's really impressed so far through spring. And obviously, when you have, the type of talk that the receiver room has gotten this spring, it can raise some ears as to what's going on up there, and how much is this just hype and how much of this is actually real. And for media members, we've had quite a bit more access this year in terms of what we're able to watch. And during our practice viewing sessions, we've watched this receiver room make a lot of really impressive plays. And it's been the guys that they brought in the portal, and Braden Pagan and Kyrie Scholes. They've lived up to their billing. And you got an up close look at what Pagan was all about up there in Logan last year, and what he's all about. And we've seen a lot of that translate so far in spring ball. What's been really, what's led to a lot of the positive talk with this receiver room and in all of that is the development of other guys that have seemingly come out of nowhere. Creed Whittemore, you look at his numbers last year, pretty modest numbers. I think he finished with, maybe around 100 yards total and a touchdown last year, but came on strong over the last couple of games, filling in for Ryan Davis. He's come into spring ball and he's taken a step forward where he's making more plays consistently. Nate Johnson was, a Swiss Army knife, a converted quarterback. And, last year his involvement was, mostly gadget play type of stuff where it was, super easy to get him involved. But Nate has taken a significant step forward. He's bought into being a receiver full time, and watching his development over the course of spring has been really encouraging. We watched him make two really impressive plays on Tuesday at practice where he's going up in contested situations and making really impressive grabs. So it's not just that it's Braden Pagan and Kyrie Scholes, the two big transfer additions that Utah made. It's the development of others in that room that's really kind of led to the encouraging and positive talk around that group.
What's the early thought process on Kevin McGivern and what he's trying to build up there?
It's been interesting, getting to watch this offense and you know going back to our practice viewing session yesterday. We got to watch a lot of 2-minute offense, situational football that Morgan Scalley talked about in his media availability. And I don't know that we watched a single run play during our 20 minutes, which is just when you talk about Utah football and what we've seen over the years, that's just I don't know if I could ever say that before when Kyle Whittingham or was at the helm or Jason Beck was coaching the offense last year, Andy Ludwig before that. So that has been really interesting. And I think when you talk about McGivern and what he's trying to do, he's really trying to develop complete players. And that's not just at quarterback, that's at other positions like running back. And so, they are looking for players to develop, beyond just what their natural strengths are. For example, running back like Steve Chavez Soto, he's been brought in because he's a physical runner, will fit great with somebody like Wayshawn Parker because of the physicality that he runs with. But a lot of the talk around Steve has been developing, his pass catching ability so that, it's not as predictable when he's in there. And I think that extends beyond just the backfield in what they're trying to develop there. They're really trying to develop complete players across the board. So I think that's been really interesting. And then in terms of what we've seen with the offense and the passing attack, a lot more structure, a lot more,
Yeah.
there are route concepts that create a lot of conflict for cornerbacks. It's just been a lot of fun to watch. And I think that's going to be a major shift from what we've seen in years past is this emphasis towards the passing game and even being tilted towards the throw game with McGivern at the helm.
Early thoughts on, and I always feel uncomfortable asking questions like this because it's spring, but I know a lot of things kind of get settled in spring, especially when you're bringing in new players. So it may not be a fair question to ask, but I'll just, the offensive line, what the battles to look for. What are you seeing from that group in your observations?
Yeah, I'm seeing a group that is coming that has made progress and is coming together. Talking about the they do a good job of mixing up lineups, but there's a group of guys in Zeroy Williams, Solato Moyai, Alex Harrison, Keith Olson, and Cedric Jefferson that have really, in my opinion, have become the top five in that group. I've been really impressed with Zeroy Williams. I've talked a lot about him this offseason. Stepping into that left tackle position in that bowl game against Nebraska, he looked comfortable and he's been in the program a long time. And we had the opportunity to hear from him Tuesday. And, he's credited the coaches and the staff for sticking it out with him. He's suffered a lot of injuries over the course of his career. And for him, this is a big opportunity to step into a role, a really important role, and to put himself on the map. And there are a number of other guys that fit that same sort of conversation. Keith Olson, Soloto Moyai. These guys have had to kind of wait their turn, and now they're getting an opportunity to really kind of step forward. And I've been impressed by that group specifically. I think the big concern for me with that offensive line unit is the group behind them, the second unit.
Mm.
Utah's, not only did they have a phenomenal starting five, last season, obviously headlined by Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu, but they had depth. And when guys had to rotate in for injuries, there was always a strong standard of play because they had that sort of depth. And that's kind of where my concern is the drop off from that first to second group. And I think Coach Gross has done a really good job of developing, linemen over the course of spring ball. But I think that second unit is going to need to really kind of put in the work this offseason going into the summer and really develop. But there are still some guys in that room that I've been impressed with, in moments and in flashes. A guy like Isaiah Garcia is also somebody that's had to battle through injuries over the course of his first 2 years with the program now. But I've seen encouraging things from him. Another guy, Nick Halleck and Soren Schenofield, are two offensive tackles that I think could develop really nicely under Jordan Gross, given kind of the similar builds and frames and types of athleticism that they have compared to what Gross was as an athlete, as an offensive tackle in the NFL. So there are pieces here that have flashed in moments, but just raising the consistency and the standard of play is going to be a big process for Gross and Gerke in that offensive line room.
Just looking at your Twitter account, I know that there's been some players that have committed to the University of Utah. What is this time of year like when it comes to recruiting? This isn't where you're going to get a lot of wave of commitments, is it? That'll probably come a little bit later on in the year.
Yeah, the big wave now in the recruiting calendar is the month of June. That is when you're going to see, all of the official visits take place. Is in the month of June, and from that point on, that's when you start to see, a lot of action on the recruiting trail. But getting a head start in spring is always helpful. And Utah's, they've had a commit in Kingston Parks, who is the younger brother of Money Parks, and they've had that since this past season. They added to it yesterday with the commitment of Jack Henderson, a defensive end, from Idaho, the number one player in the state of Idaho. And, he's a guy that really fits well in that defensive end room, in my opinion. And, so you're starting to see Utah put together some pieces in that class, starting to gain some momentum potentially. But right now, this is an opportunity for programs like Utah and BYU to bring in recruits consistently, to come out, check out a practice or two, and to interact with players, to interact with coaches. So that's what the recruiting process looks like right now. You're seeing a lot of guys up at practice tweeting about the opportunity to visit Utah. And, for Coach Scalley and his staff, the opportunity to bring in guys that they feel good about, at a time like this is really valuable, because that just sets you up for momentum and building that momentum towards the summer.
So I get asked all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, and you're more in tune with what's going on up there than I am. But we heard the press conference with Mark Harlan a year or so ago about the venture capitalists, the money, that infusion of money that's expected to be coming to the University of Utah. Then things kind of went quiet. Is there an update on where that's at right now, and are these coaches able to access that money right now?
So the deal is not finalized just yet. I know that much, but I've been told that they are nearing the finalization of the deal. And this is, I've reached out to people that are familiar with these types of deals, and this is pretty standard stuff where you announce something like this, and then there's a lot of work to get it finalized and just piecing together what all of it looks like, because this is a lot. It's not just money. It's responsibilities. It's developing a new LLC and having a staff to run that new LLC. And, Utah has honed in on a few candidates to play certain roles within that LLC, and so Utah is getting close to that being finalized. They don't have access to the money just yet, and that's that's fine. Utah's
Yeah.
in a good spot with the resources that they have available to them, but it is getting close, and I would be surprised if this gets past the month of May. I think we're that close to this being done.
I don't know if people understand the amount of layers of bureaucracy that has to go through for something like this to
Yeah.
go through. It's not something you can just put together overnight, for sure. When you're talking about uh, educational institutions, government, everybody wants to take a peek at it. I can imagine why this has taken a while.
Yeah, it definitely has. And Utah did a lot of homework, a lot of groundwork prior to announcing it, where they felt comfortable with what they were doing and how it would go. And obviously, when it was announced, there was some pushback by leaders, in the legislature, and there's been a process of getting the legislature up to speed on everything going on. And so I think Utah's in a good spot with the Otro Capital deal, and like I said, I think they are close to getting this thing to the finish line.
One golf course in America you could play right now. Is it Augusta, or where would you go? I know you're a golfer, man.
Man, yeah, it's Augusta. Like that is just the dream course to be able to play that with, the history there is just, I mean, just being there. If I could just go, if I could, secure my tickets, like that would be the dream. Just to walk the course, to be a patron there would be a dream come true, let alone play it. If I could play it someday, man, I would. Tell me what you want from me and I'll do it.
Okay, but you understand, like, look, I'm assuming you're a pretty good golfer, but knowing the course is going to just eat you up, are you still okay playing it just because you can say you played Augusta?
Absolutely, 100%. I will take my triples and quadruple bogeys. I will do whatever just to play that course again with the history there, and just knowing that, Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, all of these guys have played this course, the history even beyond, recent history. It would be everything.
I shot a 120 at Augusta. Yes, sir. I don't
Yes,
care.
and I would say that proudly,
Proudly,
Scotty.
yes. Hey, you're the best, man. Appreciate it, Steve. We'll talk again here soon.
Sounds good, Scotty. Appreciate you, brother.
There he is, Steve Bartle, one of the best out there, covering all Utah athletics at KSLSports.com. He is our Ute insider right here on the Zone. All right, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.